think my biggest reflection from all the guests we've had so far, it's great to meet people where you talk about that, where there's very little difference between all our stories. There's like a tiny nugget, Clíodhna. There's a tiny shift between someone who is happy and someone who isn't. And I mean the tiniest. Hi friend, I'm Lauren Jean. I'm a thinker, babbler, lover of stories and founder of Thinking of Me. Welcome to our first season of Women Only Speakers, where we talk all things empowerment, success, relationships, and above all else, self. I hope you might find a new thread of thought as you listen. Hello, and welcome to today's episode where I have my really good old friend Clíodhna Daly. Clíodhna's not old by any stretch of the imagination. I consider Clíodhna a younger sister ever since we met on the bus back in secondary school days. And Clíodhna has been a great friend of Thinking of Me since we launched, and we're getting our course up and running and our first masterclass and now on the podcast. And I'm really grateful to close the first season of our podcast with Clíodhna coming on and turning the tables on me a little bit. So Clíodhna, I'll let you introduce yourself and what it is that you do, and anything you want to share as to your story and why you're here with me, putting up with me for so long and all that kind of thing. But I just really want to say to our friends listening today on the final episode of the season, before we kick off and I hand over the reins to Clíodhna a little bit, I'm so grateful for all the stories and all the shares, and this gal that is with me today has seen a lot of it. So Clíodhna, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Lauren. Hello, my name is Clíodhna. I am, what do I want to share about myself? I am 26. I'm currently living in Dublin, but about to move shortly. I'm just finishing up a PhD in immunology. And I think the main thing to say is that I have zero podcasting experience. I am not a life coach. I am not an interviewer. So I thought this would be a fun idea with Lauren. We both kind of said maybe as a chance for Lauren to tell her story that I would take control of her podcast for a day. I don't know how Lauren feels about this. I think she's finding it hard to give up the reins, but we'll see how it goes. So I will introduce our guest for today. Our guest is Lauren Devine, who is a life coach and the founder of Thinking of Me. From an outsider perspective, I suppose Lauren has always wanted to help people. She's such a bubbly, positive, fabulous person. I don't know if I would go as far as to say that I was her first life coaching client, but she definitely was like a big sister to me. When I was in first year on the bus and she was in third year, and I was, getting to learn the ropes of school, and I was quite quiet, and Lauren was very chatty, and a really, really great support to have at that time. She is a Harry Potter enthusiast. She loves a bit of crack, she does her acting. And she spent a summer or two, I think, working in Greece. I don't know if she's going to talk about that, but she's lived a great life, very adventurous person, and just overall great gal. So welcome to your own podcast, Lauren.
So much. I don't think I've ever had an introduction like that. Can I just say, maybe I am struggling with the reins a little bit, but it's all yours. It's all yours, Gal. I love that. I feel like you maybe were my first little coachee, my little sister. I remember when when I say I was in fifth year maybe, I think, and we were in your house and we were upstairs, and I know we talked about this like a few times, where you were, after playing the guitar, you were playing your Taylor Swift song. I can't even remember which of them it was, but and I just looked at you and I was like, it's like you're blossoming into a little flower. Like, I'll never forget that. That's one of my favorite moments. I don't know if you remember it, but I know I've told you a few times.
I remember. We go way back. way back.
So, that's so funny.
But it's all been good. Yeah. So, okay, we'll get the ball rolling. First of all, I suppose you've made the big career leap into becoming a life coach. And I want to know, what is your definition of a life coach and what is your goal with thinking of me. I think that's the most important thing to get across.
Jumping in with the hard questions. No, it's such an easy answer. Thanks, Clíodhna. I suppose, without too much of the long story, the long answer to that is I didn't know the coaching world until I was in it myself as a coachee. And the words came out of my mouth a little over a year ago. It would have been like the winter of 2023. I was like, oh yeah, when I'm coaching, like it just stumbled out in a sentence. And I thought, oh, is that a thought kind of thing? So yeah, I had said it out loud. I didn't realize I was thinking about it in the background. And then it was one of the days at the boxing bag at the gym with my coach, my long-term coach. And I said, oh yeah, life coaching. And he just said, well, when are you going to go and do it? And it was from that moment I walked out, I went to Starbucks in Sandyford, and I just started Googling life coaching. And the Jay Shetty Certification School came up, and that was last March 24. And something clicked. I just said, I'm going for it. So yeah, that's a great question of what my definition of a life coach is. I suppose I've been explaining coaching as like the opposite of teaching. So like when you're teaching someone, you're explaining the concept to them, you're given the answers as such. And when I said I wouldn't make this too long of an answer, but again, the long answer to that is when I was in college first, and it was said to us in one of our first pedagogy lectures from St. Angela's at the time that teachers are facilitators, that we're facilitators of knowledge. And I was like, no, we're not. We just give the good notes, and that kind of thing. I had a whole different definition of what a good teacher was at the time. And I suppose as I've had that teaching experience over the last, and that was more than 10 years ago now, that lecturer had said that to us. It's so true. Like a good teacher teaches and can get the information across so that the learning is facilitated, so that the student gets the answer and you're giving them the answer, but you're also holding the space for them to figure some things out themselves. So like as a home ec teacher, I can't make the pastry for you. I can show you, I can bring you through it, I can give you the setup, re-explain the rules, all that kind of thing. I can do all those teaching moments, but the learning is in the student. And my GAN always said that like it doesn't matter the teachers you have, it's if you want to learn or you don't want to learn. And that always stuck with me through school. And I never complained about a teacher in school. To this day, like I know have always had good teachers, and even the teachers who maybe didn't really want to be there anymore or couldn't kind of keep up with the changing system, and they still had the passion for it, but that ability to kind of get the message across was getting a little bit lost in translation a small bit with the young people or whatever it might be. I always had great teachers, and I always understood that and respected that of what my granny said, that it's up to you to learn, So my definition of coaching and being as a life coach and all of that is there's some things through no fault of anyone, through no fault of my family or anything like that necessarily. There's some things that there is a gap of learning in life for me. And I know a lot of that is probably why I went down the home economics route as a choice of subject, and why it was a subject I always had such passion and interest in school, particularly like the social studies side of things and sociology. So the life coaching just feels like the natural opposite to teaching in helping someone else use the learning they have. So, with thinking of me, the goal that's there is twofold, but I'll start from the coaching side of things. It's if you know there's something that you want life to look like, or that you're trying to get better at, or you just want to make a change or that it's that holding that space thing. It's that facilitating, I suppose, of, well, let's go through the steps, you know, and let's make the pastry until you get it right, kind of thing. I got the idea for Thinking of Me accidentally in 2018 when I just said I wanted to share it. It was kind of still Facebook days. I was on Instagram at the time, but I wasn't really using it. And anyone who's listening who still has a Facebook profile, you might know what I mean with like the Facebook groups. And there would be all these different Facebook groups for different things. And I was really struggling. I didn't understand why. And I, you know that journey so much better now. But I was really struggling with all aspects of my mental health and the life I was living. And it was a very destructive kind of a time. So I just needed an outlet. And one outlet I found was in just journaling things out and just writing things out with the pen, the things that I couldn't say out loud anywhere because there was no one to tell it to, or there was no one who would listen. So I found Facebook groups and I found Facebook pages where people were all kind of sharing some of their same story and that kind of thing. So I thought, okay, well, if someone else can do it, so can I. So, and again, that natural teacher, whatever it is, kind of just sprung up, and I created the Thinking of Me blog then. And the messaging then is very different to the messaging now, but the goal is still the same, to let someone else know that you are not alone in thinking your thoughts. And it is okay to think the thoughts that you're thinking. And the blog was always a place and is a place of holding that space and keeping that awareness there, I suppose, because it's the awareness that for a long time, and still I think here in Ireland, we don't talk about either at all or enough.
Yeah.
And so translating that same goal into the coaching is when you realize, you learn, and you accept and move with the fact that your thoughts aren't real. You know, they're just not. Your thoughts aren't real, but that's not to say that it doesn't create your reality. So the more you either ignore them and don't acknowledge them, or the more you reinforce the ones that aren't serving you, then the longer it takes to find that sense of yourself and that sense of fulfillment. So I said this wouldn't be a long answer, and here I am.
No, that's okay. The floor is yours.
Yeah, the goal is, my definition of a life coach, of life coaching, is pulling out of someone all the things they can be, in who they want to be, in attaching to their true thoughts, and acknowledging that your thoughts do create your future. So how can we kind of shift them a small little bit? Is that maybe the simplest sentence? Is that a sentence that I can?
I think that sums up all of what you've been saying quite well. And I think a few things that stood out to me there. I think a big one is, I know from speaking to you before as well, that your niche interest or your target audience are kind of these women in their maybe early to mid 20s who have the knowledge, they have the opportunities, they have the skills, they've got so much working for them that it can almost become overwhelming, or like you have all of this in front of you that for you it was writing out all of these thoughts, like, how do I get my thoughts in order? How can I move forward with this? Which I think a lot of women in that age bracket definitely feel. You're out of college, maybe starting a new job. The world is at your fingertips, but at the same time, that can nearly be paralyzing. I suppose, what experiences do you have from that age range that you think you try to bring with you now, or what do you try to leave behind? What, if you were to sit down and chat to Lauren, I'll say, what, you're 21 now, so a year ago, then it's 20-year-old Lauren. Oh, sorry, your future self.
Thanks, Clíodhna. That is what everyone I've been speaking to. If you've listened to season 1, that's all the stuff I would have said to myself if I had the opportunity, or if you've listen to anything I talk about on Instagram or anywhere else. And for anyone listening for the first time, I really mean it when I say that I've opened up my diary and my life through my social media and now through the podcast, where if it helps that little version of me and other friends who are at that stage that I was at, if it helps you in any small way, then that's part of the mission and part of the goal. But yeah, that's a great way to put it, Clíodhna. As I say, the women I'm really hoping to serve and that we are serving so far through all things social media, as I say, and all things podcast, and our clients that we're working with, is there's an expectation that you have to do a certain thing or be a certain way or reach a certain level of success to qualify as a standard, I suppose. And don't get me wrong, like, there's nothing wrong with having a standard and being driven by success. But yeah, I was always someone who would have that identity as a successful young person. And, at the fine age of 17 that I am now. And for women, there's a lot of pressure, and it's no secret that we're very hard on ourselves as women. And
absolutely,
I think, yeah, in your question there of like things leaving behind and all that kind of thing, if I could have known everything I knew, everything I didn't know, everything I know now, if I could have known that then, I think the biggest thing, and I say it a lot, is just do it. if it's something you want to do. Like, I've seen that now, even in the couple of months since really launching Thinking of Me, since making career changes, since starting the podcast, I care less and less of what someone else thinks that I should and shouldn't do. And I feel less and less scared. And I think the biggest moment was when I realised that everything in the body is either in a love or a fear response. That our body only really acknowledges those two primary emotions and everything else kind of stems from that. And I ask myself the question a lot, am I doing this because I'm afraid, or am I doing this because I'm in love with the idea of it? And I know that sounds a bit nutty, but I didn't know that it was okay to just be excited about something and in love with the idea of something and not have it all figured out, because it's that kind of thing of you have to have the plan, and I have a plan. I still always have a plan, but I know that it doesn't have to, and I get caught up on this still a lot, I have to remind myself a lot, but I know it doesn't have to be in a certain order at a certain timeline. Now, I know that sounds a bit contradictory as a coach to say that when you're setting goals and putting targets, but there's some things that just can't be rushed. And I was actually reflecting on that this evening, even as I move out of the plant pot, but we'll come to that again, where it's like 18 months ago and more that this whole process is actually really kind of stemming from. And yeah, I think, and I hope this answers your question, I think as women, we don't let go very well. And I think as Irish women particularly, we don't, because there's a generation and generations ahead of us that have had to keep things rolling and going. And we as a nation, a little bit more so than our European friends, and definitely more so than some of our friends over the water and that kind of thing, there's a lot of history of all things family life and whatever else. And without getting too deep there, not to let someone else's fear be your deciding factor. And I think what I mean by that is not to let what someone else thinks be the reason that you don't do something, or that you feel like you have to do only that one thing. I was terrified always of letting Gan down. And so much so that even when I was a child and it'd be Lent and you'd give up sweets for Lent, here in Christian Ireland. And in fairness, great discipline that puts in us. But I was terrified of breaking Lent, and I'd always ring and I'd say, is it okay if I break Lent for such and such a birthday? And she'd always say, yeah, of course, as if it was a silly question. And then I'd be like, all right, okay, and I'd have the sweets or whatever else. But I had that kind of mindset of letting someone down if I made the quote unquote wrong decision. So yeah, the biggest thing, and I, even at Christmas just gone, a lot of things really clicked for me. Everything with relationships, environment, like where I'm living kind of thing, travel, work, friendships, my appearance, you name it. My biggest piece of advice, if I could go back and talk to myself, would be to not let someone else's opinion, someone else's fear or judgment, and no matter who that person is, even with all the love, let that stop you from doing something, or feel like you are kind of becoming cornered into the only option is something someone else wants. Does that kind of answer?
Yeah, no, that's so important. And I think, again, in rural Ireland or in a small town, there's definitely more a sense of, not that anyone cares what I'm doing, but everyone knows you, so you don't have that sense of anonymity. And it could be very easy, definitely, to fall into that feeling of, I should do X, Y, and Z to keep other people happy. And yeah, I know definitely, personally, I would say in Dublin it's a bit easier.
Yeah, no, for definite. And I'll just jump in on that to say, and they know, if they're listening, they know who they are. Like, there's people who have literally quoted, no, sure, X Townland would say if I came on, that they wouldn't want to come onto the podcast and share. And that's everyone's choice. Everyone has the right to kind of keep things private, obviously. But yeah, there's something about countryside to Dublin, and then even outside of Ireland again, then, like, where you can just exist. And that's where Greece was great for me, and that kind of thing as well, no one knows. So I'm just reaffirming, I spot on with you there, Clíodhna. Yeah, and thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah. No, but it's huge. And like that, just being able to live your own life for your own, obviously not negatively impacting other people, but doing what serves you the most. And I suppose, and that keeps coming back, I know, with all of your podcast guests and with yourself, is that kind of sense of self and how important that is. And I think what I've taken away from your podcasts and your social media is that is a huge part of thinking of me, is that sense of self. So I suppose, have you any input there? Like, how do you create a strong sense of self, or anything that you do, or any anecdotes that you have where, being Lauren, or your sense of self, how do you get that together and get that across?
Thanks, Clíodhna. Yeah. Well, that's exactly it. So thinking of me, I suppose I didn't, in my long-winded short answer to you earlier, when I started playing with the pen and I started putting it out there as the blog originally back 2018, I'm pretty sure I Googled it. It was before like ChatGPT days, obviously, but I'm pretty sure I just like Google searched good blog names, and I came across, I don't know, Reddit, or some of them anyway at the time, with like suggestions and ideas, or Pinterest or wherever. And yeah, thinking of me kind of fitted and sat, and I was like, that is exactly what I'm doing. I'm thinking of me here, because I didn't know who I was outside of my family. I didn't know who I was outside of a relationship. It was the first time I was single in 5 years coming on at the time. And I'd always been in a relationship all through secondary school. Like, there was always something going on, a bit of drama of some way, shape or form. And I needed it. I was, for someone who always said I was really independent, I actually had and can still have such a codependent streak, and it's something that I have put massive work into like spotting those moments and then building habits that are away from that. And I'm really grateful to coach I've been kind of working with on that in the last year, and also the self-education trainings and communities and that I've just been completely immersed in for the last 4 years. I wouldn't know a lot of everything. I
All
wouldn't
that
know
kind of
what that.
self-awareness, I suppose.
Yeah, I wouldn't know what that even means. You know, like you hear
Yeah.
the phrase sense of self, and you hear your identity, and I even wrote it out. Like I even had that awareness of, okay, well, who am I equals who I am. Like that was coined in one of the journals, and it's on the blog on Instagram from somewhere back, like 2021. I had that little aha. Like most of the blog, particularly Instagram blog, is all the aha moments of me kind of going, so this is what makes sense in life, you know? And I've always said it, and will always say it. It's when you find other people and other communities that think like you and know your story without knowing your story, if you know what I mean, and have kind of been on that journey themselves as well, or have seen it in someone else. So you don't have that kind of thing of I'm only figuring this out alone. And I think I really found a lot of my self when I saw that mirrored. And yeah, God, I don't think I've talked about this, at least not out loud anyway. When you meet someone who brings out all the best in you, you know, and you don't have to think, full stop. You are just you know, it is just me. There's no thinking involved. And you want to be better, and they pull you into being someone better. And all that kind of thing. That's where like magic genuinely happens. And again, without being too cheesy or anything like that, having a reflection held up and having a mirror held up and seeing the uglies of yourself as well. And the same goes for that with other people. You know, when you see a little bit of yourself in someone else, or someone else acts in a way, and then you can kind of go, oh God, well, I don't ever want to do that, or I'm really sorry for the time that I did do that. Being able to say sorry and being able to forgive parts of me that never wanted to do or be the way that happens and happened. Yeah, so that sense of self and things I do is I still journal. Like I still talk to myself.
You're the only one
Constantly.
who listens, Lauren.
But you need to. Like, you can't have self-awareness without coming to yourself. Like you can't
Absolutely.
grow and be unless you kind of hold the mirror up back on you as well. So the pen is one thing as the first thing. Finding someone and meeting someone who, as I say, pulls out and brings out that part of you that you are in love with, you know, because, and they say that, you know, love is, and no matter what you love, who you love, if it's a family member, romantic or otherwise, it's the case of you're in love with the version of you that you are when you're with them, you know? So it's meeting person and people who are that and of that with you, and reflection. So as I say, the pen is one thing, and kind of like logging all things, what's happening right now, and kind of getting into your sense of the present moment. Like that's where journaling and the pen comes for me, is kind of just acknowledging what's happening in the present moment. But the reflection side of things is I've done a lot of deep work and outside of coaching. So I mentioned like the state of my mental health when I was in quite a destructive period, and I couldn't make sense of things. And particularly for anyone listening, you know, thinking of me, there's a lot of therapeutic approaches, I suppose, in the coaching sphere, but by no means is it a replacement of or an anecdote to anything that, is in the realm of mental illness in any way. So I've done the deep work and engage in the deep work of understanding my past and understanding things that happened at a young age that shouldn't have happened, and responsibilities that shouldn't have been put on but were, and that's how it is, and there's no blame as such. But what little Lauren, I suppose, had to grow up with a little bit quicker than she'd like to. And I'm very conscious, Clíodhna, even right now, as we talk on a podcast, as I self-declare as an entrepreneur and all things thinking of me, I'm very conscious in the last couple of weeks that, am I doing the same thing again? Am I pushing myself into solving all these problems sooner than I'm meant to at the age I'm at, rather than just being in the moment of who I am? And I'm really grateful that I have that awareness, because, and your question was about me, but I'm going to talk about some clients here with this, and some people that I've been able to chat with and grateful to chat with through the podcast and just DMs and like online and stuff, where you get to a point in like 10, 20 years or the end of your life where if you didn't actually do any of the things you wanted to do, or you kind of wake up and you go, this isn't who I am. I had that, and I'm so grateful in a way that I had that at 22, and for the way I had it and the scary way that that happened, because I had the whole rest of my life in front of me, and I've known that, and I'm driven by that every day, because I know that life is short, and I talk about like whys with people and all that kind of thing, but my why is, I've seen wasted lives. I've seen lives that have been cut short for one reason or another. And I've seen truly unhappy lives. And there's something stubborn and there's something blessed. And like, I don't really want to go too much into that realm either right now, but it is blessed that I get to live life better, like, yep. So why keep punishing me? And I mean that, like, why keep punishing me for things that either I did or was done or whatever it might be, when there's a whole world out there and life is so short. So yeah, when you talk sense of self, there's some of the things I do, and they're like 1, 2, 3, I suppose. One is, as I say, with that mirror and that connection, the present moment of the journal or whatever it might be. Breathwork is new and great in the last year-ish, I suppose, as well as all things movement, that keeps me present. Boxing, God, I couldn't go. And that is a sense of self. That was something I didn't know
Absolutely.
I liked. Yeah, so, anything that brings me into the present, as I say, the pen is the first thing that always brings me into the present, and then the reflection of all things, little Lauren, and reflection of other people's lives, being able to kind of think about that, being able to think a little bit deeper. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it does. And yeah, I suppose just on the back of all that you're saying there, and yeah, there's so much in that, and obviously, yeah, for you, blogging, the pen and paper, I've been in your apartment, there is scrolls and thought processes written everywhere, so it's clearly pen and paper is a big one for you. And I suppose just to kind of circle back to like you were saying, like, obviously you've had a couple of challenging years. I know kind of when you started college and stuff. And I don't want you to go into any more detail than you're comfortable with on any of that. But kind of, does that still weigh on you? those tough times, or is it just looking to the future now? Are you kind of like new Lauren, or same Lauren, or how do you, I don't know, how do you view all of that? If that's a question at all, or if that makes any sense.
No, it does make great sense, and it's a great question, and it's really fun because I can honestly say, like, that I can't change that. That's done. And for a long time there, I was ruminating. Like, I went in circles a lot in, well, I could have done this and I should have done that, and if I had only done this course then, or if I'd only been happy, or if I had left this sooner, or if I had been out more with friends here, or if I hadn't prioritized the partner, or if I had prioritized the partner, or all these kind of things. I spent a long time going around through all of that, and I really lamented the college years in a way, because again, kind of the nature of the course that I did go through, the 5 years of doing it took me, not the 4.
That's okay.
Yeah, well, look, I deferred my final year and I'd left the first course and all that kind of thing. So yeah, and as I say, that successful identity, like, and being a woman and all that kind of thing, I was feeling massively like a failure. But it was a time, Clíodhna, for me where all of that other stuff that had happened, that I had spent my teenage years and everything kind of going, oh yeah, there's like this and there's that, but it's fine. Like, it's like if I could have been a Ross with margaritas at like 13, 14, 15. I was Ross with margaritas, from friends, where like everything's fine.
Oh yeah, I'm with you now. Yeah.
Yeah. That was, and that's what I mean. I see people who still go through everything's fine phase, and good for you if that's you, and how you get through it. But yeah, things were like, all that awareness was coming up, and all that ugly was coming out, and I do use that phrase ugly because it has to come up from, like, and I mean, I'm not, and I'm conscious of talking to the PhD scientist here, but when I say things like, and I won't go, but like, biologically, ugly was coming out, and in my health, biologically, ugly was coming up, and that kind of thing. All that physiology was starting to reflect some of that internal emotional work, and there is a connection there, and I'm not going to go into it because there's people a lot more qualified and experienced than me to be able to tell you about that. But there is a lot there on those connections of experience and your health and so on. So yeah, there was a lot of ugly in all aspects coming up at the time, and I just had to go through it. Like, it actually just all had to happen. It had to come out in some way. So no, I don't look back on it now, and I definitely don't regret anything, because I couldn't have done it any differently, Clíodhna. Like, I really couldn't have done anything differently, and that's okay, because now here I am now, and yeah, like, would I still prefer to be 17 and do it all over again? Yes. Is my physiology like absolutely perfect? No. But is it something that I can work with right now and keep creating a future? Then yeah, absolutely. And I actually had a little niggle. So I'm moving out the plant pot, and plant pot, my friends, for listening, if you don't know, is what I've nicknamed the studio I've been in, that I moved into for 1 year, 4.5 years ago. And I'm excited because I was with the community of people that I learn with and learn from again this evening, and I was talking to one of my coaches, and I was talking to a client, and all that kind of thing, and it all makes sense. And you mentioned like the piece of the paper. I'm so driven, Clíodhna, and I can hear myself say these words, and I can see eyes rolling. But I'm actually I'm so driven by what I know I'm creating, and I see it now. Like, I actually really see it now for the first time properly. And some days it's a little cloudier than others, and I do use the clouds as an analogy, but yeah, I know what I'm walking into, and I didn't know what I was walking into. That's where it all really came from. I think, like, I had left Loreto. I loved school, you know that. Like, I loved school. I loved everything about my school. I loved everything about my friends, the bus, the crack, everything. And I used to wake up in first year college when I was in Galway, and I honestly was having like nightmares. I would wake up crying and that kind of thing, like because I was still in the school and I was either like trapped in the new gym. There's all different things that were happening, and the school would always kind of change because the way there's all renovations and all that.
Yeah.
Even before you had started, because there was a gap between us. So yeah, the way dreams are. So I used to have these dreams all the time that I was still there, and I actually had one a couple of months ago for the first time in a long time, but it wasn't like a scary one or anything. But I was like, I haven't had one of them in a while.
Colorado dream.
Yeah. So I can't see the future, but I can see the future for the first time, I think, since I had left school. And if that makes any kind of sense to you or to anyone listening.
But isn't that so great, Lauren?
Yeah, it really is, Clíodhna. It's mad, and it all had to happen. It all had to happen in the way it had to happen. And
yeah, and I think I think you don't even give yourself enough credit, with like that. And I think everyone moving off from secondary school, you're losing such a comfort, especially I know you talk so fondly of your time in secondary school, and you had lovely friends and you got on well with all the teachers, and it is such a comfort that then college is such a huge step, and it can be so overwhelming for so many people. And for anyone struggling with mental health issues or any of that, like, I know you joked about doing your 4-year course in 5 years, but you did it. Like, you got there.
Yeah.
You got the end result. Like that.
The year I dropped out as well.
But and like that, you're dead right. It all happened the way it was supposed to happen, got you to where you were supposed to be. And it's so wonderful that you are feeling like, okay, this is falling into place. And, you're coming to your wrap of your first season of your podcast. And I suppose reflecting back on that, and you've had some fabulous guests. And what have you learned? I'm sure you've learned lots. Or what are you taking away from this season? Or has it kind of inspired you to do anything different? Or are you like, oh, season 2 is going to be more of the same? Get me some more young women to chat about their experiences, or where does it go from here?
Massively, and thank you. I did the trailer for this podcast, and for season 1, I knew I was on this podcast. Like, I could talk for hours to myself and to anyone who'd listen. So I knew that doing something like this would help someone else. And I think my biggest reflection from all the guests we've had so far is there's really very little difference. And I knew that, but it's great to meet people where you talk about that, where there's very little difference between all our stories. There's like a tiny nugget, Clíodhna. There's a tiny shift between someone who is happy and someone who isn't. And I mean the tiniest. And I'm talking about people who've been on the podcast, people who we've reached out to, clients that I'm serving, and just everyday Joe Soaps, in general, that I don't know yet, or else maybe I've only ever come across on social media or whatever it might be. There's the tiniest little thing, and it's that thing of that click, genuinely, where you say, I'm in the picture now, or I'm in the picture anyway. Like, for some people it was just always there, like it never was a question mark of me, you are just there and you're important anyway, and there's no questions asked. And that's my reflection, because all the threads, and I call them threads sometimes, are so closely knitted and the same. We're all woven. So yeah, without going to Lauren, season 2 is coming. I won't reveal too much just now, but we will have a mix of guests. We will have male and female guests, and that's because we all, like, my first, like, Jay is a man.
Yeah.
Robin is a man. Jay Shetty is a man. We have to learn and hear things from different people, and yeah, so season 2, I hope, will help to bring about a little bit more of that exploration. It's a bit of an action kind of a season. So I won't go on about too much about it now, but because I first want to celebrate the women who we've had. And my question mark was, what kind of woman do I want to be? And the mother cloud, which we didn't chat about today and we won't really get into just now.
Chat about it if you want to. I won't stop you.
Ooh, that was dangerous. Okay, well, the mother cloud is the overarching fundamental contribution that Thinking of Me will get out there and is out there. She is out there. It's just getting her message across. And when I learnt from a collection of thoughts, a collection of clouds that I had journaled out and truths that I had found in life, as I say, one of the ones being like, well, who am I is who I am, all those kind of little things. And I got my full click in like October 2022. I was like, this is it. This is like the biggest cloud. This is the biggest thought I've had. This is what's been smothering me. This is what's been like hanging over me. So mother in the sense of the biggest one. Think like mothership, so this is the biggest cloud. This is what's hanging over me. And I can say it out loud now repeatedly, Clíodhna, that my biggest thought and biggest cloud was, well, I can't be loved. Like, not that I shouldn't be or couldn't be, I just can't, point blank, be loved. And I didn't know that. And it sounds really silly in 2025 to still say things I'm still learning, like that life. And as I said, life coaching mission and so on. I'm still learning things about life that sometimes other people take for granted that everybody knows it. And I didn't know it. And just in explaining that, I remember going to the dentist when I was like 6 or 7 or something and getting in trouble for not cleaning the back of my teeth. I had all like plaques in at the back of my teeth, and Mom kind of looked at me and the dentist kind of looked at me, and I was like, I didn't know. And I genuinely, nobody had told me. And I think it's something that, you warrant as a child to not know. Like, I didn't know. I didn't have an intuition to know, and I just hadn't been shown that you brush the back of your teeth as well as the front of your teeth. So I had a build-up of plaque. So sometimes life is a build-up of plaque that you didn't know you had to brush away, or you had to learn in the first place. And the mother cloud is a build-up of plaque.
All of the scribbles on all of the walls have built up to this, is it?
100%. Yeah, that's literally what they all are. So it's the crazy woman detective scene of piecing it all in a way that makes sense to other people, because I have a great way of using like Lauren words. Like, even in the gym, I still don't know what the roller coaster machine is actually called. It's the one that you like strap yourself into and you like hip thrust in it. I call it the roller coaster. There's the Hulk machine. Again, I don't know what it's called, but you act like the Hulk.
Like a chest press type thing.
Is it the one? No, I thought the chest press goes out like this, doesn't it?
I can't see your arm, Clark.
No, that's okay. All right, sorry. And for friends who are listening, I'm moving my arms in an upward movement. So, if you can let me know what the Hulk is actually called. But the point in case. So I thought was, again, these are all the perfect examples. I thought it was point in case, and I've been saying point in case for years, and I found out last summer it's case in point. So what I'm getting at is it's all those things that as I like or I'd learn it or I'd figure it out, the teacher in me, the one who wants to kind of tell and show, was collects them. And the mother cloud, she is a collection of thoughts in an order and sequence that shows the journey in a non-linear way, because hey, it's Lauren, in a non-linear way of what that means to actually understand love. And I know that sounds really cheesy, but she is the overall entity. So why did I start talking about the mother cloud, Clíodhna? Because honouring the women who have been on the podcast and that we're serving in Thinking of Me, we have something coming up where we have a women-only summit. And some of our guest speakers, and we haven't chatted about this. The speakers from season 1 and some of our women speakers from season 2 who are yet to come on, and some others who don't, for their own reasons, want to come onto the podcast itself, but are excited and willing to come to the summit. We are having an event, like a mastermind all together, where we solve a few problems. So details on that will follow. And if you want to find out, for friends listening, just follow Thinking of Me, and all the socials are me, Lauren Jean, and you'll be able to click to register to come to that. But it's in the collective. That's what I'm getting at. It's in the collective. And season 1 has joined all of those same threads together with the variety of speakers we've had. Like, it's been so much fun. Like, and I couldn't pick out, and I'm not going to pick out any one in particular, but I think we've covered great ground in getting some of all the aspects of what it means to be a woman, and some of the questions that we have, and the things that haunt us, and the things that drive us. And we're all the same. We're all one, you know? So yeah, that's what I'm excited to kind of bringing into season 2. And as I say, bringing a bit of that male perspective in, because that does help us as women as well. And yeah, that's kind of where we're at with the podcast.
I mean, that sounds good.
Yeah, I thank you. I know, and my friends who are listening, I know some of the things I do aren't always conventional, but I do them in a way that is human. And if you are someone who just gets lost in some of all of the kookiness that can happen with social media and everything else, you know, and AI now and all of that, all these great things, but sometimes you're not heard. I know what that's like, and everything we're doing with podcasts and otherwise, whether it's with a norm or whether it's not, Thinking of Me wasn't with a norm at the time in 2018. In fact, it's the exact opposite of a norm. Becoming a life coach in Ireland in 2024 and bringing that to the young people and my age group, your age group, you know, is not a norm. And I'm glad to be able to do that, to make some of the things that aren't normal out there, but that we know are the right feelings, and we know are the right thoughts, and we know are just the human side of things, to bring them together. So yeah, podcast is season 1 has been so fun. It's evolved and is evolving into our whole overarching message, and that will unveil and decloud itself for you listening and for all of us as we keep with it, because that's the future, Clíodhna, and that ties into your other question. You know, I said it there, I can't see the future, but I can see the future for the first time in a long time. And spoiler, you know, the end of the mother cloud, that's exactly where things are at. It's like, how can you stay out of the cloud, you know, and how can you actually feel some of that sunshine on you, you know? So yeah.
And are you willing to disclose the mother cloud? What form is that going to take, or are you decided on that, or is that hush hush?
Yeah, let's put it out there. It's good for accountability, if nothing else. And I've talked about that with someone recently, where if you've no one to tell, I found the pen and I start putting on the pen on paper. And if you want to share that and you've no one to share that with, put it on your social media because people will remember. So I'm saying, let's say it here now. It's great accountability. The Mother Cloud Clíodhna will first be a performed piece. That's what I'm doing with her. Because when I started to piece it together in the order of how I wanted it sequenced, and I read it back, I thought, sweet and gentle Jesus, this is so depressing. And this is why the podcast is great as well, actually, because I really wanted to be able to talk about some of these themes, some of these topics, some of these conversations that we talked about in the blog, but that get really heavy. You know, when you're talking about all things journey and you're talking about like, all the things we talk about even today, you know, with things like your mental health, your sense of self, all that sort of stuff, it's a heavy topic. And as me, and thank you for your introduction even, you know, I think I'm the exact opposite in the out loud. And it's putting a voice to the voice that isn't heard is the way the mother cloud is going to first show herself. So in a performed piece is a bit of a selfish reason as well, because I'd like to kind of see that, and I think it would really help stir a little bit of discomfort in people to kind of hear some words said out loud in a way, and this is all I'm going to say on it from a creative side of things because I don't want to reveal too much, but in a way that you wouldn't hear in the everyday, by a voice you wouldn't hear in the everyday, that I hope will bring about some thought. So yeah, the Mother Cloud will first be a perform piece. I still want to see her on a shelf though, and
Okay,
that will,
in the form of a self-help book, in the form of biography, in the, you know, what kind of, in a whole new genre of book? I don't know.
in true Lauren style, I'm going to say I don't have the word for that, Clíodhna. I see what I mean, and for now, that's as much as I can kind of give you. I can see what I mean in its style. Think poetry / self-help / biography / science. And if you can find an imagination of what that looks like, that's what I see it like. But one thing, and I suppose I'll kind of finish talking about her on that in saying I have a little piece of paper and I can see it right here now as I'm talking to you. I'll read it back in full, like from start to finish, because when I say like I've lost my mind a little bit in this, I have lost my mind a little bit in this cloud. At times in writing it first, in like after like starting to put it together for other people first, because I know you're in it, Clíodhna, and I know the women that are on our podcast this season are in it, and I know the women who are listening to this are in it. I know this is not just me, so that's why it's important that it's done and it gets out there, because I have written on the little piece of paper, once I have her read, I don't want to ever read it again. Like so what I mean by that is once I go from it, and it also answers your question as to like the past and what's happening in the future, and that once I have it, because that's why I performed first, once it's in words, written word, in her sequence, done. I'll read it, and I don't ever want to read it again. So I do hope, you know, she'll continue to be learned from, and I'd happily talk about it and aspects of it, but I don't ever want those words to go through my eyes again. And I'd be a big reader, and you know, you mentioned Harry Potter there. I'm again looking at Harry Potter books here on the other side of me, where when you lose yourself in a world, it's the best stories. And this season, I didn't even talk about that, but you know, stories this season and stories in general where you just let go of your current reality. And friend who's listening, you know, to this point now, you know, you're letting go of some of the reality that's happening around you to listen to what's happening for someone else or in something else, whether it's fantasy or whether it's real life biography, whatever it might be. You're in it, you're there. So that's, I mean, your thoughts aren't real. And I'll quote Rowling on that, you know, where it's Dumbledore and Harry, and you know, Harry says, you know, is this real, or is this happening inside my head? And you know, Dumbledore answers him, and I'm maybe misquoting, but Dumbledore answers him and says, of course it's happening inside your head, but why should that make it any less real? You know, so that's what I mean. with the cloud. I nickname her the cloud, but that's what I mean with the mother cloud. It's a very real experience that I think every woman goes through at one level or another. So yeah, that's her. I hope I answered whatever you asked me. But we're still only starting, Clíodhna. Like,
Long road
we're
ahead.
still only starting. And friends that are coming along with us for the journey, thanks for holding space for me as I figure it out for giving it to you. There's a great way of looking at it. It's like going into the trough. So I look at it, I learned with the communities that I'm part of the self-education industry with. And one way that they put it is, think of it like going into the hole. So coaching is, they would define it as building the bridge, you know, shortening the gap from where you are to where you want to be. And I agree, and I see it that same way as well. And as I say, life coaching is kind of bringing you through and to the things and holding that space for that to happen. So, and you speed up the process because you've been there and you've done it yourself. You know, you've made the pastry, you know how to do it, you're showing someone else, and but more importantly, you're letting them do it for themselves. So where you are to where you want to be, and there's that gap, and they'd have the kind of image of you have to keep diving back in and bringing up another nugget to give back to whoever's waiting on the other side for it. I see it as I have to keep going into the clouds to make sense of what's happening in there, to come out and go, yeah, okay, well, this is the reality out here, you know, and keep coming back into the reality of now. And you're only capable of as much change as you're willing to be honest with yourself about your reality right now. You know, the capacity to be honest with where you are in this present moment is what will determine the level of success in change that you're trying to achieve. So in going into the cloud and coming back out with another fresh nugget and realizing that I'm in the reality, I'm not in the cloud. Yeah. What was my point? That is what we're doing here. So again, thanks for holding space for me while I do that for you. And particularly Clíodhna for taking reins. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
What have you enjoyed in all this process? Because as I say, you were a friend of mine for so long, and I meant it when I introduced you. You know, you've been a friend of Thinking of Me since we launched, and I've seen you, and without outing, seeing you, like I've seen your support the whole way through, like early days, all early days, like for years, and that kind of thing. So yeah, I suppose what would be anything either you've learned or you've enjoyed? Let's keep a podcast maybe with this season, or Thinking of Me in general, if there's something outside a podcast, or yeah, any kind of thought reflections.
Thought processes. Yeah, it was definitely, you'd said, you know, you're going into this career change, and I was like, ooh, brave, but big Lauren supporter, you do you. If this is what makes you happy, go for it. And again, life coaching, not something I was familiar with. Again, Ireland were a new audience to it, I think. And then I went over to your house for giving a little bit of a hand with the masterclass. Now, I didn't really do anything, but I was there and I was supporting. And that was fabulous. I mean, to see you kind of, I don't know, work in your field and give your insight, give your advice that was to CAO applicants, and really pulling from all of your experiences, and as a teacher and as a former teenager, former young person, still a young person. But you know, that was really a very fun, positive day. And then I've been listening to the podcast, and since you've been putting it out, you've gotten some great speakers, and I think the big thing is listening to your guests and to the questions that you're asking. I know it has me almost going like, oh, how would I answer that question? And then missing what they've said and having to go back in the podcast to actually listen to the answers. And which I suppose is kind of the point, is that this is life coaching with Lauren. This is getting you to think about yourself, think about your experiences. And like that, you need a balance of moving forward with your life, but also taking a moment, pausing, and doing that kind of self-assessment, or doing that, I don't know, self-evaluation before going like, what do I want? What's motivating this decision? Where do I want to go next? And yeah, I'm just coming along for the ride. Happy to hang out with my friend Lauren, but it's lovely, and I think you're doing a great job, and it's great to see it all taking shape for you.
Thanks, Gal. I really appreciate that, Clíodhna. We'll dress up as Vaseline and fairy washing up liquid.
Oh my God.
Friends, this is a private joke. Again, one of the great things about school, we had great PE, or not PE, sports day.
Yeah, dress up.
So, yeah. Would you like to close my final episode of season 1, or shall I?
I think I will sign off for now and say thank you, Lauren, for answering my questions and talking about your experiences. And I will finally hand the reins back to you and let you sign off your podcast.
Thanks. I'm happy either way. I'm happy genuinely. Clíodhna, this has been so fun, and friends listening, this whole season has been so fun. I know we touched on it there that season 2 is coming and we'll have male speakers present. Do check out and keep an eye for registration for the summit. It is a limited space event, so if you have learned anything in this season about yourself, or you have questions, this is your opportunity to interact and or just learn more. There's no obligation for any friends with Thinking of Me as a listener of the podcast to our social medias. There's never an outing of you in any way. But if you do want to share your thoughts, please do. I love hearing them. I love interacting. And Clíodhna, thank you so much again for sharing some of your insights on all things Thinking of Me up to now, and for hosting the final episode of this season. And we're really only starting, so all I can honestly say from the bottom of my heart is, as a friend to you, Clíodhna, thank you for having that friendship, and times where there's space need to be held a little bit more than others. Thank you for holding that space. And for our friends listening, thank you for continuing to listen. And maybe as a seed of thought, what kind of space are you holding at the moment? Thanks, friend, for listening to the Thinking of Me podcast. I hope you found something within our story today that lands for you. You can keep up with us on Thinking of Me blog, Thinking of Me Coaching, and Lauren Jean on socials. Go to thinkingofmecoaching.com/checklist for your checklist for self-fulfillment. Until our next chat, talk soon, my friend.